I'm sure people are going to be very normal about Mickey 17, a movie that quite literally is satirizing some of the most famous and powerful people in the world who are also extremely divisive. This is Bong Joon-ho's follow-up to Parasite, which won the Oscar in 2019. And this is a movie that is very much directly about the now and specifically some of the people who lead this world now. I am, of course, referring to Donald Trump and President Elon Musk. And to understand and appreciate what Mickey 17 is, you have to understand that element of this movie. This movie is by no means apolitical. In fact, it's very clear where this movie stands on a political spectrum. This is Bong Joon-ho, obviously the guy who made Parasite. He is someone who is interested in class division and has a disdain for what capitalism does to people and the ranks of which capitalism sorts rich and poor. This movie is very much a continuation of those themes seen in Parasite. This is a movie about rich people and it's a movie about poor people and everyone in between in this division of class. And people's strive to be in access of wealth. Like his other films, this is a story about the now. He is a very contemporary filmmaker, and it has a very dark sense of humor that is going to churn off a lot of people. And you guys need to know this before going into this movie, because yes, this movie is a bizarre sci-fi film. Trust me, this film has some absurdist elements in it, and its absurdity is purposeful. But to go further into this movie, let's just kind of give a brief explanation of what Mickey 17 is about. So Mickey 17 follows the character of Mickey, a man who signs up to be an expendable in a space colonization project to a new ice planet. His job is quite simple. He is a disposable worker. He is supposed to die. He is supposed to do all the dangerous parts that come with colonization, report back on it, get killed, and then get reprinted over and over again. As Mickey gets closer to the colonization of this ice planet, he begins to realize something is off about the leader, Congressman Kenneth Marshall, played by Mark Ruffalo. And let's talk about what I loved in Mickey 17, because there is quite a lot that I really enjoyed within this film. And we need to just start with probably the best performance of this film by a mile, which is Robert Pattinson. He has been an incredible actor recently, and in this movie, he is able to switch modes of genre very well. He is able to do the comedic sensibilities just to a T. He is so funny in this movie. Mickey 17, the character that he plays, that is the 17th clone version of the Mickey character. He's so comedically aligned and such perfect comedic read for every scene. And then you get other versions of this Mickey character. You get to see him play, you get aggressive, you get to see him play a jerk, you get to see him play a little just soft at times. Like, it is really him having fun with himself. In other words, to describe it, Robert Pattinson is playing with himself quite literally in this movie, in one way or another, in certain scenes. And he is just going for it in every scene of this movie. Some people aren't going to resonate with this performance. Some people are going to find it almost too cartoonish. This is almost a performance that you could see a comedic actor like Jim Carrey given. Like, this has more in similar with The Mask than really anything else you can think of Robert Pattinson's career. I really appreciate what Pattinson was doing in this movie. I think it's a brilliant performance from him in a multiple roles type scenario. And he is the character that is the lowest on the totem pole. He is quite literally, as it's said throughout the movie, he is expendable. He is the disposable worker. He is supposed to be the symbolic of the people who constantly get screwed by the rich. He is supposed to be someone that is faceless, nameless. That is the point of this character. So to find this character gradually shift from a nobody to a somebody is a really fun journey for this Mickey character that I think Pattinson and Bong Joon-ho have a really good handle on throughout this movie. And when an incident happens in this movie that shapes his perspective, you really see that really change his worldview, as well as the people around him. I want to focus on an actress that I've never necessarily been a fan of, but I also haven't seen her in much outside of Star Wars Rise of Skywalker. I know I've seen her in other projects, but it is Naomi Ackie. She plays the character of Nasha. I think I've mispronounced that last name. It's Ackie. And what she is in this movie, she's a secret agent and Mickey's love interest in the movie. And I thought she was great in this movie. She has a belief in the Mickey character that is really the driving force of many scenes within this movie. She is also somebody that doesn't adhere to her ranking as a member of a class. She obviously has much more power than Mickey. She is much more higher on the totem pole, but that doesn't stop her from forming this relationship with Mickey's character. I think she is really well utilized in this movie. I really liked her performance and where this character goes as well. And when we're talking about the vision of class and other things that I think this movie does really well, we need to get to the two biggest performances in this movie, which are probably going to be the two most divisive performances we see in Mickey 17 with people. And that is from Mark Ruffalo and Toni Collette. Mark Ruffalo plays the Congressman Marshall in this film. And let me just say it, the reason I kept alluding to Elon Musk, the reason I kept alluding to Donald Trump is because in this movie, Mark Ruffalo is doing a Donald Trump impersonation. Now, while watching this movie, I definitely got a lot of shades of Elon Musk in character and what the character is actually doing in this. But in terms of the acting performance that Ruffalo is doing, it's almost a one-to-one of Donald Trump. He's doing a lot of the mannerisms. He's using his hands in a very specific way. The way he kind of purses his lips. There's a very Donald Trump feel to his, even to some of the physical movement that he does. He kind of has a dance swing throughout this movie that feels very Trump-like. Some people are going to be rubbed completely the wrong way with this. I thought it was really funny, and I thought it was such a fun performance from Mark Ruffalo to give in this movie, and I thought it worked for the exact tone that Bong Joon-ho is hitting in this movie. And the other performance that is partnered with it, and I think the reason that the Mark Ruffalo performance is so strong is because Toni Collette is in this movie, and she is just incredibly fun in this movie. She is really chewing the scenery in a way that even Mark Ruffalo, who is chewing the scenery, she steals this movie from him multiple times of this in this film. She is such an awful person in this movie, and it's such a comedically large performance from her. She is going for it in every scene. She is just as cruel as vindictive. You kind of get the sense that she is the puppet master behind the Ruffalo character, because Ruffalo's character is quite stupid in this film. And yeah, no, I was really impressed with what she did in this movie. And they lead this weird group of people in this movie that is like this cross between a political following and also this like religious cult. I saw somebody say Donald Trump mixed with Joel Osteen. That is a very apt comparison in this movie. And it's a very direct thing. Like, if you're trying to say that this movie doesn't have a political feel, or that it's trying to be apolitical, or it's not trying to be a direct attack on Trump, I don't know what else to tell you except for the fact that in this movie, the supporters that are almost cult-like in their support of the congressman, they wear red hats in this movie, and the Ruffalo character is often wearing, I think it's like a red cape. Like, it's very clear what this movie is trying to be. And that's one thing that I really appreciate about this movie. It is not subtle. This movie doesn't pretend to be subtle. It doesn't pretend to be apolitical. It is saying what it thinks, and it does so in a way that I never found smug. Like other movies that have tried doing this, I think Adam McKay's movies come to mind. This movie is very direct, and it's very funny in its lampooning. Some people are going to find that cringe. If you like it, you're going to really like it, and I thought it worked in this movie, and I found it very funny, in large part due to the control that I found Ruffalo and Colette's characters to have. And it's also like this hard thing, especially with the Ruffalo character essentially doing a Trump impersonation in this movie. Everything from the movements to the dialect, the pauses in it. Like I said, while watching it, I definitely thought him to be more of an Elon Musk in personality, but you definitely see the Trump influence in it. And right away, it's very clear that this guy is not very smart and is disgusted by people lesser than him. And his followers eat it up much to their detriment. In fact, so much so that they are brainwashed in this movie. There's a very early scene to kind of just show the ridiculousness of these people's loyalty, which very early on, I think it's the Mark Ruffalo introduction scene in this movie, is there is a scene where they are all at the dinner hall and they're being served portions, and the Ruffalo character comes out and he essentially says that they're going to ration the food a little bit more, and he is banning all sex because sex burns calories. And these people, like, you know, abstain from sex and have less food. Like, this is such a cartoonish thing to do, especially as you see the Ruffalo character obviously not abstaining from either of those things. They are quite literally being stolen from to please the richest of the rich on this ship. This movie has to deal with something so absurd and comment on it that it tries to do the best of it. And even by the end, as absurd as the Ruffalo character, as absurd as the Toni Collette character, as evil and wickedly evil they become in many ways, like they are so over the top, they still can't really match like the realness of kind of what's going on. Like there is still a subtleness to them that doesn't even fully mimic real life. It's this weird like kind of thing of trying to satirize something, but also kind of knowing that you won't ever be able to get to what's happening at the moment. I really liked what Bong Joon-ho was doing in this, but it will not work for everybody. When this movie works, we are exploring the inner politics of the ship. But when this movie gets a little external in its politics, when we're following the colonization, when we're leaving the ship, I think that's where this movie starts to fall apart in many ways. This movie has a lot of stuff that I really liked about it. I would say for about 2/3 of this movie, I was really into it. I think the final third of this movie can really struggle, and it kind of just becomes from that point on 50-50. Some of it works, some of it is just too weird for me. Some other moments I just found just flat out fell short. And it's something that happens very abruptly in the third act. I just don't think the third act is particularly well fleshed out. I don't think it pays off in any incredibly great fashion. There are moments of the third act that I like, specifically a moment with the Mickey 17 character and the Mickey, one of his clones in the scene. That's all I'll say about it. But this story gets very silly very quickly, and it loses a bunch of its thematic weight from there. It also is a movie that just suffers from having an editor. I enjoyed it, but it does feel long while watching it. And I wanted this movie to be tighter because I think when you are trying to pack a political punch, the tighter your movie is, the more the abrasiveness hits. And when this movie gets a little just too out there and loses some of that tightness, I think the punch loses a lot of its effect. And that is never to say that I thought this movie was bad, but it is never able to recreate the heights of where this movie hits. I think specifically the best sequence of this movie happens in, really, I believe it's like close to the beginning of the second act. And it is this scene where Mickey is having dinner with the congressman and his wife. And it showcases everything this movie is trying to say about these characters, everything that this movie is trying to say about this world, the cruelty, the reflection that it's trying to do. It is a scene that is perfectly portrays the cruelty of the rich, communicates the silliness of these people in power, and the torture that they inflict onto people less than them. And I think it's the best scene of this movie by far. And I think this is where each of the respective actors shines the most. Toni Collette has a very funny scene involving a carpet in it. And it's a very funny scene. It's a very tense scene. It's very sharp. If you understand what this film is going for, I think you'll understand these characters perfectly in this movie. And when the movie hits that tone, I find this movie to be incredibly fun. When the movie follows this the natives of this ice planet, I think it has some really major structural issues. It's like this, everything Bong Joon-ho is trying to do as a director, a lot of his sensibilities, you're either going to be on board with it or you're not. And he has a really specific comedic sensibilities with his characters. And I'd noticed myself at times really starting to get strained by the end of this movie. And I do think like this movie is beautiful to look at. It is different than any sci-fi movies, but I definitely think you can see the homage that it's paying to such films as Empire Strikes Back and Starship Troopers were the two that really came to mind. But yeah, this is a movie that just by the third act, I think it kind of gets lost in what it's trying to be, what it's trying to say. And it ends up just kind of getting lost in the satire where it doesn't really know how to land the ship of the ridiculousness that it's built up for itself, especially when we get to the natives of this planet and the ideas of colonization. I think, like I said, the inner politics of the ship and the people that would follow this essentially colonization, I find that all interesting. When we actually get to the actual act of colonization, I think this movie kind of becomes a little generic in a way that I wasn't expecting from Bong Joon-ho. Either way, this is a really interesting follow-up for Bong Joon-ho from Parasite. You can definitely see how this movie relates to Parasite. You can see what interests Bong Joon-ho in this type of story. And it's really cool that he got to make a movie with $120 million budget. Bond makes the most of this. That's what he does best. And this is not going to be for everyone. This is a movie that I don't even necessarily think is great, but I found it to be successful. And when it's successful, I found it to be very successful. And when this movie is a bit off or it doesn't fully work for me, it didn't really bother me because I was still along for the ride. So Mickey 17, I can give this a positive review. I am going 3.5 out of 5 stars. So thank you to everyone who watched this video, and make sure to subscribe to my channel for more reviews. I'll have a review of Novocaine coming out, and I'm actually going to be going backwards to the past, and I'm going to be reviewing I can say without spoiling it, I will be reviewing a Best Picture winner from a few decades ago.